friends. I'm just warming up here for those that are catching the replay, jumping on with Kenny, Joseph, Jordan, and Aaron. And Kenny, one of my buddies, he has written a book from disconnect to direct that you can find on Amazon. It is fabulous. I was just telling the crew here, he is a master of the one-liners. And Kenny, help me out with this one, but I think the line is, "What's in the well comes up in the bucket." Is that right?
That, that's perfect. Yes.
Okay, what now? Here's one of the things I like about it today, as we are talking about leaders of influence who lead through empowering, right? Lead through empowering. Kenny, why don't you just jump on in there first of all, and I'm gonna bring this on over, but why don't feel like you have to necessarily marry it into this, but why don't you tell us what's the idea behind what's in the well comes up in the bucket, and we'll just see how it naturally plays into this.
Yeah. So we know that no matter what we face in life, we've put things down into the well, or there's some things in the well that has seeped into the well that we didn't ask for. And you have to look at you have to say, okay, what is in that well? We know comes up in the bucket. So you know the well, but you own the bucket. And so as a leader of influence, that's what you do. A leader of influence would not own their bucket, that they would not own it, that they would just shift it off, shift the blame, live with the guilt. They would pass it off on somebody else. That's their fault. That's Russ's fault, man. He's the one to get the KPI. He didn't come through with this. And all that is down in the well because there's some of those, whatever is down in there, the value systems, the belief systems, the fears, all those things that are driving that is coming up in the bucket. But as a leader of influence, you have to own your bucket and what's there, and then make that pivot and that shift. Say, okay, now how do I move forward to be an authentic leader?
Man, so well said, Kenny. And this is where I want to bring up the little acronym that we've got from John Maxwell that he pulls in. Hey, Parker, welcome, buddy. Glad you can make it with us. So, from becoming a person of influence, here we go. As we take a look at this one, I want you to just take a look at how he's broken down that acronym there to be able to do it. Of course, this is where we are going to be sitting right here is empowers people to act. But I want you to think about this as kind of a well. If had I thought about this before, Kenny, like I could have made this look like a little well, right? And they're not necessarily in any order of operation or importance. It helps build out on the acronym, but that's where it's so important to make sure that our well is filled well, I guess, in this way, so that what's in the well comes up in the bucket. And how are we going to do that? So I do want to come to you guys again. When you think about like a leader of influence who has really been an empowering leader, I'd love to know what was it about that person? What was it they did that really empowered you or made them an empowerer? Let's just turn it over to you all for a moment. Jump on in if you got one.
So I've always believed that someone that is a great leader, trusts in his team, allows them to be able to learn from their mistakes, is able to kind of give some advice, but not necessarily do the job for them, be able to learn from your own experience. Obviously, guardrails are great, but also just kind of getting out of the way, letting your team to be able to actually do their job. I mean, that's kind of why people bring someone on is you trust that they're going to be able to do their job, that they're competent, that they're going to be able to uh, do the task at hand. And leaders that micromanage or leaders that can't let go tend to be almost high strung and they can't let you have to be able to trust in your team. And so, in my mind, a great leader is one that trusts in his team, allows them to learn from their mistakes, but then also has full confidence in their ability to be able to get the task done.
That is really well described. I want to come back to see if anyone else has something they'd like to add to that. As we do that, though, you made me think about what I do invite people to do every single time we jump on. This is one that Kenny's familiar with. He's also a Maxwell certified coach, trainer, and speaker. And this is what John teaches us. Every time we're with him, he invites us to act. What's something that you can apply and or change? And then no matter what's something you can teach. And anytime we approach a learning situation, especially a training situation with, I'm going to teach this to somebody, something from this before the end of today, man, we just enter that learning situation differently. And then we exit ready to apply because we're ready to teach this to somebody else. So that's my invitation to you today is to help empower you find something today that you can apply and or change. What's something you can start doing, or you need to change what you're doing. And then what are you going to teach? We'll see by the end here, and I'll come back to that to be able to do it. Anybody else? Ben, good to have you with us. Kenny, jump on in there, buddy. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I love what Jordan just said, and I think it's so key. And I think this is something that needs to, well, I think we could take the entire ACT, but he said it's okay to fail. Russ, I don't know about you, but in the years of leadership, especially with my book, I want them to get like day one, I want them to win and have an opportunity to win. And as I taught to different leaders, they're in this 90-day window of prove me that you belong in this leadership role. And as a leader, they step back and say, hey, sink or swim, partner, sink or swim. It's up to you to make this thing happen. Instead of, we should be creating, as Jordan just said a minute ago, we need to apply the fact that, hey, I want to apply the fact that it's okay. I'm learning from my mistakes and my failures, and it's not fatal nor is it final. I need to change the culture to where, hey, it's okay that we've had a $3 million issue based off a decision we make. We only had the amount of information we had at the time. And then we need to take that and teach that to the entire organization that, listen, it is okay. But we've got to use that success cycle, as we well know, right? But take that, apply, change, and teach. But I believe Jordan hit it on something really good there. Failure, it defines you in most times in organizations. As soon as you hit that one failure in that 90-day window, hey, peace out, you're gone.
And what John's already written at least 3 books on, if not more, is that failure is not final, right? Failing forward and learning to learn from that. So Kenny, since I know your mic's working here, will you jump in and just be our good old mentor John for a second here?
Yeah, a leader is great, not because of his or her power, but because of his or her ability to empower others. Man,
Mhm.
what a great thing. John helps us just, and he empowers us to do that.
Yeah, he is so good at this. So something that I really love, I love etymology when it comes to words, and so often we're using words and missing the power within the words. So when it comes to empowering, we can see that power is at the root of that word. And so when we break it down with etymology, the em is actually in, to provide with, and then poder, like in Spanish, poder, right? Power, to be able. So we want to provide someone with the ability to be able to do something, right? We've got to give that. And that can be difficult for leaders to do. Number one, to give up the control, to give up the authority, to give power, that can be difficult because they may feel like they're losing something. And another is creating the environment, because it's one thing to give that, but it's another to give the environment and create a space to actually be able to do it. So that when you bring those together, it's to give official authority or legal power to someone so that they can do something. So one of the books, there are a few books. I'll come back to these, but we've got this one today. This is the one that we are actually going to draw from on a little training video from David Marquet. Turn the ship around. We're going to use the word intent to do that. Learned about that one by reading Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek, which is also a great book to help us learn how to empower others. And then two that come from the hospitality field that if you haven't checked these, at least do a little overview, see what you got on YouTube by Horst Schulze, the co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton, Excellence Wins, and the Nordstrom Way. This one should be required reading. Like this should be a textbook in like fifth grade, man. The Nordstrom Way is so good to be able to do it. And the way that they empower people is essentially their handbook is a 6-word card that they hand you if you get hired at Nordstrom, and it says this: use good judgment in all circumstances, I think is the exact word. Use good judgment in all circumstances. That is the empowerment that you have. And then you have the budget to be able to do it, right? Like this $2,000 slush fund to be able to help empower you to make those calls when it happens. And you've probably heard some of those stories about what Nordstrom does. They'll go back to that classic story of someone who brought in their tires and the front desk person there who's like, you're bringing tires back? Like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? And they just take care of it. They're like, we will refund you the tires. Now, the backstory behind that, the location that Nordstrom was then housed in had earlier been a tire shop. And so it had changed hands, but the person had bought the tires at that location, came back with the tires, wanted to exchange them, and Nordstrom just straight up went for it. similar ones with the Ritz-Carlton. So when we think about this, we can think about it even beyond this. Like, think about your personal life and the people that you interact with, and in what way can you help empower them and help them go through some of the learning curve maybe that Jordan and Kenny have talked about right here. And just figure out, how do I help people to help themselves by giving them this power? So we're going to do a quick switch over here, and I'm going to bring us into a little shared screen so we can watch this video together again. This is from a a presentation by David Marquet, who wrote the book Turn the Ship Around, and literally wrote the book on how to turn the ship around. Here we go. And Kenny, let me know if this doesn't come through.
I was trained for one submarine. My guys were trained to do what they were told. That's a deadly combination. We all know organizations where people just follow the leader into disastrous situations. So I got my guys together and I said, hey, we got a problem here. I was trained for another submarine. You're trained to do whatever nonsense comes out of my mouth. That's right, Captain. I mean, they knew. They already knew. I was pretty much talking to myself. So I said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do, guys? And we talked about it. Okay, what I really wanted to do was get ready for the inspection. But we were sitting in the wardroom. We spent a couple hours. We were talking about it. And we came up with all these different things. And, well, you Captain, you just got to be smarter. You got to give better orders. It's like, well, how am I going to learn a whole nuclear submarine, miles of valves and pipes? I spent a year learning Olympia, 2 weeks over here. So in a year we'll be safe? That's not going to work. We had to deploy the submarine in 6 months. So we talked about it, and they said, okay, there's only one logical solution. We figured it out. You, they're pointing at me, you shut up. What do you mean? That's not what captains do. That's not what captains of nuclear submarines do. They walk around. They give orders. They sound like Russell Crowe. Head 2/3, dive, make it up 500 feet. Helm left 15 degrees rudder, steady course 255. Load torpedoes and tubes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Flood down, open outer doors, right? And I thought about it. And you know what? They were right. So at that point, I vowed never to give another order. And if you came down on my submarine, it would have been very confusing, because you couldn't have pointed. It would have been hard to say, well, who's the captain here? Because you wouldn't have seen me giving orders. I did retain one order. The final order to launch a weapon, a torpedo or a missile, I kept with me, because I felt since that was going to result in the deaths of other human beings, that I didn't want that on anyone's conscience but mine. That was my moral and ethical responsibility. But even though everything else in the Navy, there's long lists of things that says the captain has to authorize. Captain should authorize. You got a couple nukes in your group, they'll tell you it's true. Captain authorize, submerge the ship, get underway, start up the reactor, shut down the reactor, connect to shore power, divorce from shore power, on and on, break rig for dive, on and on and on, pages of these things. I just refused to give those orders. What we replaced it with was intent. Instead of giving instructions, if you want your people to think, don't give instructions, give intent. So they would come to you, hey, what do you want me to do? Well, left full rudder, steady course 255. No. I say, well, what are we trying to accomplish here today? Well, we're trying to get in position so that when the enemy submarine comes through, okay, so where do you think we should position the ship? Maybe over here. Good idea, go there. You give intent to them and they give intent to you. So my officer stopped requesting permission. And every other submarine, Captain, request permission to submerge the ship. Submerge the ship. Submerge the ship, aye. On Santa Fe, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. Very well. And they did it. And it might seem like it's a very small, nuanced change of language, but it was hugely powerful, because the psychological ownership now shifts to them. They need to discover the answer. Otherwise, you're always the answer man. You can never go home and eat dinner. And so we started doing this. And it was hugely powerful. Actually, we went another step. Then I got smarter and I said, when the officer said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship, I would ask him, well, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And he'd look at me Hard to tell. I'm guessing you're wondering whether it's safe. Bingo! I said, well, convince me it's safe. He said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. All men are below. Hatches are shut. Ship's rigged for dive. I checked the bottom depth. The submarine's in the water that's been assigned to us. Then later I would ask them, is it the right thing to do? And they would say, well, yes, sir, because our mission requires that we... And these are the two pillars that I think support this idea of giving control. These are the two pillars that need to be in place. The technical competence, which is represented by, is it safe? And the organizational clarity, which is represented by, is it the right thing to do? And you put those things in place, and then you can give control, and you give control, and you put those things in place. And you are off to the races. So think about what's happening now. My officers are starting to think like me, because I have to think like, where should we do the ship? And so the guys below them. Now this took 24 hours to happen. It took a couple years for the full implementation, but immediately there was change. The officers started thinking like me, and so pretty soon I could go in the engine room, find the engine room lower level watch who was taking logs in the lube oil pumps, and he would know what the submarine was doing. He would know whether we were up tight, close to the enemy, and it was time to stay quiet, or whether we had backed out a little bit. This may be a good time to change filters and make a little bit of noise. A year later, we received another inspection. A year later, we received an inspection. The inspecting team gave us the highest grade they had ever seen. Not that year, not in the Pacific, ever seen. Why? I mean, this crew had a captain who was a dummy. It's because that needle started moving up. And on another submarine, there was one guy in charge, one guy giving orders, one guy thinking, and 134 people doing what they're told. I don't care how smart you are. On my submarine, I got 135 thinking, active, passionate, creative, proactive, taking initiative people. It's a tidal wave. You don't stand a chance. Here's the solution. Move the authority to where the information is. You mean the software engineer can decide whether we ship the software? Yeah. You mean the client, my salesman can close the deal? Well, up to $1,000. No. Yes. Whatever the price? Yes. What does it take to make that happen? Now, if you're picturing a lot of people out there doing crazy things and a bunch of arrows going in a bunch of different directions, you have the wrong picture. You create the environment so that those people are out there making decisions as if the CEO were standing right behind them. And if it's not the same decision, it's actually a better decision because they have the information. And not only will you get better speed of execution because now you don't have this delay, what happens is those people feel like they matter because they're thinking. You engender thinking. You create the environment for thinking. The secret is nothing I said is hard. There's nothing hard. The only thing that's hard is you. It will feel wrong. You've been genetically and culturally programmed to take charge and make it happen. Take control and attract followers. And what you want is to give control and create leaders. It will feel wrong, and you will repeatedly start down this path if you so choose, and then you'll be angry at yourself like I was. And you will have a failure, and you'll go back to the old ways. And you will pick yourself up, and you will go again. You will go again. And by doing so, you will achieve the greatest thing possible. You will have achieved greatness, not because of the deeds and acts that you did, but because you set an environment where the people around you and their families and their schools and their organizations and their businesses, they've achieved greatness. That will be the greatest thing of all. Go forth and be great.
All right. Go forth and be great. I want to come back to all of you and see what was it that stood out to you. I got a couple screenshots here that I put together into a slide. You don't need to play off these, but these will just be like helpers for what you saw in the last 9 minutes. What observations do you have? What thoughts did they elicit?
So I'll jump in. It's kind of like what I said before is, I mean, you have to be able to trust in your team, knowing that they're competent and that they're able to go and do their job. I think sometimes, again, too many people think or too many leaders will not relinquish control or don't trust in their team. And then it becomes a question of, do I have the right people on the bus? Then it becomes a competency kind of a conversation. If the competency is there, and there's a clarity of mission, you should be able to give control.
I like that. So that little drawing right here, that control, those two C's, I love how those play together. Like, are they competent? Do they know how to do what they need to do? Is there clarity of mission there so that when they're making the decisions, they know they're making the right decision because it's aligned with the vision that happens to be there? So excellent observation. I love it. Anything else? Thoughts that came from it or to you? That's the most important part is what comes to you and through you when we're experiencing something like this.
I was going to say one more comment. It's almost kind of like you instill in the people that you work with a sense of extreme ownership of responsibility and I apologize, there's construction outside. Uh, it's almost like you have a ownership inside of what happens. Exactly. Jocko's awesome.
Mhm.
It boils down to you take pride in what you do. And even as, you know, for companies I've worked for in the past where you almost take a personal ownership in the outcome and the level of delivery in the product so that way you can stand behind it and be proud of like this is what we did. And at the end of the day, it's whether it's recognized or not, you know, it's almost like you hold it to yourself. You know that you did your best and that you delivered the best outcome for someone, even if it wasn't the most ideal. You did everything that you could to be able to help that person. And if you can say that with confidence and with um, for lack of a better way of saying it, with all your heart, that you've done the best that you can. Um, yeah,
Okay, I like it. Go ahead, Kenny.
Well, I love the fact that he said, I'm going to own what I own that only I can do. You can't
Mm,
send the nuke out there. You can't nuke them because and I love what his explanation was. Like Russ, I don't want you to have to go to bed at night with that on your mind. That's my call. And then he said, I'm okay with being the biggest dummy because what I am doing is I'm creating other people that are much better together and this more expedited. They can make those decisions. He created a more and more before, as John Maxwell would say, environment for vision and leadership. He just created something bigger for them. And I love what Jordan says. Yeah, they took extreme ownership and it was okay because that's what you want to do in those situations when you got to make split second decisions or you got to expedite the process with the organization. You don't want to be the cog in the wheel. You don't want to be the bottleneck, and you're allowing them to make those decisions because now all of a sudden they're thinking like you. That's what you want. You want them to be thinking like you, and they take and guess what, they're going to love it even better than you just kind of iron fisting them all the time.
that is so true. So, again, that extreme ownership. How do we help them do that, though? Well, one way is to follow this model. That this is the way Simon Sinek draws it in Leaders Eat Last. He takes from that story and he says, "So let's move authority from the top and move it down to the people who have the information are able to do something with it, and this person will remain have the vision to be able to give the direction that we need." But man, let's push the authority to the information. When I was thinking about that, the way that Simon did that today, also what I did is I just came over and I looked up like I noticed author is in authority, right? And so Kenny, you're an author. And when you think about like what that means, not only does it like endow you with authority, the fact that you're an author, but you had to have authority given from some place to be able to even do this. Like in this case, you gave yourself the authority to be able to do it. And as you think about that, Kenny, as an author, how do you view author and authority coming together? I think you could speak better to that at least than I could.
Well, I mean, this comes from shared experiences. I mean, the thing that of writing the book is coming the fact that, man, I'm coming from 35, almost 40 years worth of leadership experience, and I've gone through these things, and it's okay for me to put this on paper, and okay, let it go where it is. But yeah, I get authority from other places. Because I'm a faith leader, so I do get authority from some other another source. But I love that the authority in me, it just by putting this on paper, just comes from a vast experience of watching this play out over and over and over.
Hmm. Excellent. Well, let's keep that in mind is how do we help give authority to people so that they can not just become authors, but they can become the author of their story, that extreme ownership. Kenny, thanks for being here. I know you got to run as we wrap up here. Good to have you. But yeah, not just recommended reading, but recommended application is how do we help people become the authors of not just their life story, but everything that they're involved in. And the way we could do that is to give them the authority to actually do it. So as we wrap up, I'd love for you to just take a moment to think about this. What was most valuable for you today? What can you take, something from the video, something that you felt, something that was shared, something that maybe you ended up sharing, and you're like, that was actually a new idea as it flowed from me to be able to share with everyone. And then as you do that, make sure that you also teach this to somebody, give them the opportunity to be able to do it. And that'll empower you as you empower them and then empower them to empower other people. So I'm just going to put this up. And while I put this up, this is just our ad for next week. We're going to be on Tuesday at 12:30. I'm going to bounce around every couple of weeks, just try to find good times for different people so I can sometimes be live and sometimes jump on the recording. So if this doesn't work, I'm sorry. I'm going to put this in our chat notes so you can grab it there. I know it can be really frustrating trying to grab a QR code if somebody's standing in front of it, number one. Number two, if it looks like Aaron is probably on his phone, he's like, how am I going to scan a QR code when I'm on my phone right here? So you can just grab that link right out of our Zoom chat. But while that's up, I do want to give any of you the final word, just as we log off to today, to say, here's what either was most valuable to me today about empowering, or here's something I just feel like is important we all stay on the same page as we move forward with empowering. Aaron, Jordan, any final thoughts from either of you?
Yeah, I'll
Aaron,
go.
we'll start.
So I like to, you got to get out of your own way sometimes. You got to let other people do their own thing too. You can't just micromanage and stuff like that. That's the gist that I got.
Yes. Have you ever been micromanaged? Have you been in one of those unfortunate situations?
Yeah, I tend to do it myself sometimes to folks, but
Yeah.
anyway, I've learned to let go, and there's more progress when you actually let go. Like, hey, I trust you to do this stuff, and I'll come back. And anyway, so yeah, I've worked on that.
Well, I'm glad you did. And it's interesting how that seemed to come full circle because Jordan, you started us there, it seems like, of get out of the way. And now that's where it's coming back to is, hey, let's get out of the way. So I think that's definitely one of the things that we need to take from this is get out of the way. And Jordan, I'll give you that last word.
Yeah, you know, I think that there's been times, at least when I've been put into positions of leadership, where I'll usually ask, what does that look like to you? So if someone presents an idea, it's like, help me understand what that looks like. So that way I can kind of get behind it. And I've noticed that whenever I understand an issue or understand a little bit the perspective, I'm able to get out of that way. And I think that a lot of times when it comes to that difficulty of relinquishing control, has to do with maybe it's the fear and you want to be able to trust in someone. And if someone doesn't have that established trust, it's really hard to be able to give that. And so, again, for me, it's the best leaders are leaders that are able to help others become leaders themselves. And the best teachers are the ones that they learn the material, they grow from it, and they're able to distill it in ways that other people can be able to digest it and understand it. And so at the end of the day, if you're able to help someone grow in some kind of capacity, you're a great leader. And so, and sometimes that's just getting out of the way of others and letting them be able to show that they are competent and that they are capable. So,
Man, well said. We will just end on that with the invitation to come back next week, Tuesday, 12:30. If you can't register, I'll get you the replay and the resources to go. In the meantime, be great as you empower others and help them to be great at the same time. All right, my friends, catch you next